I stood in my childhood bedroom, suitcase in hand, as my mother's words echoed through the silence. The greatest gift for your sister's wedding is if you disappear from our family forever. My father nodded in agreement from the doorway, arms crossed like a judge delivering a final verdict. Emma had always been the golden child, but this moment crystallized 28 years of neglect and emotional abandonment. Without begging or pleading, I quietly folded my remaining clothes, grabbed my car keys from the dresser, and walked toward the door that had witnessed countless arguments and tears. The sound of it closing behind me felt like a final punctuation mark on my relationship with the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The drive to my downtown apartment felt surreal, like I was floating outside my body watching someone else's life implode. Every red light gave me time to replay the conversation that had just destroyed everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, but I refused to cry. Not yet. Not when I needed to think clearly about what came next. The apartment I had called home for 3 years suddenly felt foreign when I unlocked the door. Everything looked exactly the same, but something fundamental had shifted in the universe. I walked through each room, methodically taking inventory of my life like I was preparing for an estate sale. The framed family photos on the mantel mocked me now. Every smile felt like a lie I had been telling myself. Sleep came in fragments that night. I kept waking up expecting this to be some cruel nightmare, but morning arrived with harsh reality intact. Over coffee that tasted like ash, I made the first decision of my new life. I called Marcus Rodriguez, the real estate investor, who had been pestering me for months about buying my condo. The cash offer he had mentioned suddenly seemed like divine intervention. "Harry, you sure about this? This is pretty sudden," Marcus said when I called him at 7 in the morning. "I need to close fast. How quickly can we make this happen?" "If you're serious, I can have cash in your account within 72 hours. But once you sign, there's no going back." "Good, send the papers." Next, I drove to First National Bank and requested to freeze the joint savings account I shared with my parents. The account had been set up years ago for family emergencies, with each of us having equal access. What they did not know was that over the past 2 years, I had been the primary contributor, depositing most of my marketing salary while they occasionally added small amounts. "I need to withdraw my portion and close my access," I told Janet, the branch manager who had known my family for years. She looked uncomfortable. "Harry, are you sure this might cause problems with your parents?" "That's exactly the point." While the paperwork processed, my phone rang. Jake Sullivan, my best friend since college, was calling about Emma's wedding preparations. Jake was dating one of Emma's bridesmaids and had been helping with some of the technical setup for the reception. "Dude, I just wanted to check something with you about the bachelor party plans," he said cheerfully. "Emma mentioned you decided to skip the wedding to travel through Europe. That's so random. When did you decide that—" My blood turned to ice. "What exactly did she tell you?" "Just that you had this amazing opportunity to backpack through Europe and didn't want to miss it. Her parents seemed cool with it, said they understood you needed to follow your dreams or whatever. Pretty mature of them, honestly." I hung up without explanation. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. This was not a spontaneous decision born from wedding stress. My parents had been planning this rejection for months, crafting a narrative that painted my absence as my choice rather than their cruelty. They had systematically begun erasing me from the family story, telling relatives and friends that I was off on some grand adventure, rather than admitting they had discarded their own son. The bank withdrawal went smoothly. $47,000 represented my half of the joint account money I had earned through late nights and weekend projects at the marketing firm. As I walked out with the cashier's check, I felt something I had never experienced before: complete financial and emotional independence from the people who had given me life but never truly accepted it. That evening, I began researching cities where I could start over. Somewhere far enough from Chicago to avoid accidental encounters, but close enough to American opportunities. Portland, Oregon kept appearing in my searches. The tech scene was booming, the cost of living was reasonable, and most importantly, it was 2,000 miles from the family that had just voted me off their island. The apartment sale finalized faster than I had imagined. Marcus was true to his word, and by Friday afternoon, I was holding a check that represented everything I had built in my adult life. The irony was not lost on me that in trying to make me disappear, my parents had actually given me the financial freedom to completely reinvent myself. I packed everything that mattered into my Honda Accord, donated the furniture to charity, and spent my last night in Chicago in a hotel room near the airport. As I fell asleep, I realized I felt something unexpected relief. For the first time in my life, I did not have to worry about disappointing anyone or living up to impossible expectations. Tomorrow, I would drive toward a horizon that belonged entirely to me. Portland greeted me with drizzle and possibility. The drive had taken 3 days with stops in Kansas City and Denver that served as decompression chambers between my old life and whatever came next. Each mile westward felt like shedding skin I had outgrown years ago. I found a furnished studio apartment in the Pearl District within a week. The rent was $800 a month, a fraction of what I had been paying in Chicago, and the neighborhood buzzed with coffee shops, food trucks, and young professionals who looked like they were writing their own stories rather than following scripts written by their families. Finding work proved easier than expected. The marketing degree from Northwestern and my portfolio of campaigns for Chicago clients opened doors quickly. TechFlow Solutions, a startup focused on small business, digital marketing, hired me as a senior marketing specialist within 10 days of my arrival. The salary was slightly less than what I had earned in Chicago, but the cost of living difference more than compensated. My new colleagues were refreshingly different from the buttoned-up corporate environment I had left behind. Lisa Chen, the creative director, wore vintage band t-shirts and had purple streaks in her hair. David Thompson, the lead developer, brought his rescue dog to the office most days. The company culture emphasized results over appearances, creativity over conformity. For the first time in my professional life, I felt like I could breathe. 3 weeks into my new routine, I was debugging a client's social media campaign when my personal phone rang. The caller ID showed Emma's name and my stomach clenched. I'd been dreading this moment while simultaneously hoping it would never come. Harry. Her voice was thick with tears. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. What do you want, Emma? I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Mom and Dad said you changed your number, but I found this old email account and got your number from Jake. Harry, I never wanted you excluded from the wedding. I've been fighting them constantly. I walked outside the office needing air and privacy for this conversation, fighting them how every single day since they told me their plan. I threatened to cancel the entire wedding if you weren't invited. I screamed at them, Harry. I told them they were being cruel and insane. But you're still getting married without me there. The silence stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. When Emma spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. They said, if I insisted on inviting you, they would withdraw all funding for the wedding. $80,000, Harry. The venue, the catering, the flowers, everything is already booked and paid for. And I have $60,000 in student loans from graduate school. I can't afford to pay them back and fund a wedding. I chose the money and I hate myself for it. The honesty hit me like a physical blow. Emma was not the villain in this story, but another victim of our parents' manipulation tactics. They had engineered a situation where she had to choose between her brother and her financial survival, knowing exactly how impossible that choice would be for someone drowning in debt. Emma, I understand why you made that choice, but understanding doesn't make it hurt less. I know, and I'm so sorry. Can you please come home? I'll pay you back everything they spent. I'll get a second job, I'll figure it out. I just want my brother at my wedding. The desperation in her voice broke my heart, but returning felt impossible. I can't come back, Emma. I'm building a new life here and it's actually good. Better than anything I had in Chicago. Where is here? Portland. I have a job, an apartment, a fresh start. For the first time in my life, I wake up and don't feel like a disappointment. She cried quietly for several minutes while I watched food trucks serve lunch to tech workers who had no idea they were witnessing the end of my relationship with my birth family. Will you at least think about it? She finally asked. Emma, I love you, but I need you to understand something. When they told me the greatest gift I could give you was to disappear forever, they meant it. They weren't having a bad day or dealing with wedding stress. They planned this. They've been telling people for months that I chose to skip your wedding to travel. They erased me before they even told me I was erased. The sharp intake of breath on her end told me she had not known about the cover story. They what? Ask Jake about the conversation we had. Ask your bridesmaids what they've been told about why I'm not coming. You'll find out that your parents have been rewriting history to make themselves look like understanding supporters of my fictional European adventure. Oh my God, Harry, I had no idea. I know you didn't. That's why I'm not angry at you. But I can't come back to people who put this much thought and energy into removing me from their lives. I hope your wedding is beautiful, Emma. I really do. After hanging up, I sat on a bench outside the office and watched Portland live its life around me. Food truck customers laughed over Korean tacos, cyclists navigated between cars with practiced ease, and somewhere in the distance, a street musician played guitar with his case open for donations. This city did not know my history or my family's expectations. Here I was, just Harry, a marketing guy, who was pretty good at his job and learning to be comfortable in his own skin. When I returned to the office, Lisa noticed my expression. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, surprised to realize I meant it. Everything's actually okay. 6 months in Portland transformed me in ways I had never anticipated. The marketing campaigns I developed for TechFlow's clients consistently exceeded performance expectations, leading to client retention rates that impressed even our most skeptical investors. My approach focused on authentic storytelling rather than flashy gimmicks, and local businesses responded enthusiastically to strategies that highlighted their genuine value rather than manufactured hype. The professional success was gratifying, but the personal growth mattered more. I'd started seeing Sarah Hendricks, a third-grade teacher at Laurelhurst Elementary, who approached life with infectious optimism and genuine kindness. We met at a community volunteer event where she was organizing book drives for underserved schools, and I was helping with digital marketing for local nonprofits. Sarah appreciated my dry humor and never made me feel like I needed to be anyone other than exactly who I was. Our relationship developed naturally without the performance anxiety that had characterized my dating life in Chicago. Sarah knew about my family situation without judgment, offering support when I needed it and space when I needed to process things alone. She had grown up in Oregon with parents who encouraged independence and authentic relationships, making her approach to family dynamics refreshingly healthy. My apartment had evolved from a temporary landing place into an actual home. I had bought real furniture, hung artwork that I actually liked, and established routines that centered my own preferences rather than external expectations. Saturday mornings meant coffee at Powell's Books. Sunday afternoons were for hiking in Forest Park, and weekday evenings often involved cooking dinner with Sarah while discussing our respective days with students and clients. TechFlow had grown significantly during my tenure, and my contributions had not gone unnoticed. Lisa promoted me to creative director in October with a salary increase that reflected both my performance and the company's expansion. The promotion came with equity options and decision-making authority that felt like genuine recognition rather than empty titles. It was during the celebration dinner for my promotion that Lisa dropped the bombshell that would change everything. I have some exciting news about our biggest potential client, she announced to the team. We've been selected to pitch for a complete brand rehabilitation project. The client is Kellner Morrison, an associate's a prestigious law firm in Chicago that's dealing with some serious public relations challenges. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Kellner Morrison and Associates, my father's firm. What kind of challenges? I managed to ask, hoping my voice sounded casual. Apparently, they mishandled a high-profile discrimination case and are facing significant backlash. Bad press, client defections, the whole nightmare scenario. They need a complete image overhaul, and they're willing to pay top dollar for the right team. David leaned forward with interest. How top dollar are we talking? 6-figure contract potentially extending to 7 figures if the initial campaign succeeds. This could fund our expansion into the Seattle market. My mind raced through the implications. My father, the man who had wanted me to disappear forever, now desperately needed the kind of marketing expertise I had spent 6 months perfecting. The irony was so perfect it felt like fiction. I'd like to take point on this project, I said quietly. Lisa looked surprised. Really, it's going to be intense, and you've already got a full client load. I have some familiarity with the legal industry from my Chicago days. I think I can bring a unique perspective to their challenges. All right, if you're sure. The initial meeting is scheduled for next Friday. We'll fly out Thursday night. That evening, Sarah and I walked along the Willamette River while I processed the cosmic joke that was about to unfold. I had told her about my family situation early in our relationship, so she understood the significance of this development. Are you going to tell them who you are? She asked, watching runners pass us on the waterfront path. I'm not sure yet. Part of me wants to see how this plays out naturally. And the other part wants to watch him squirm when he realizes his disappeared son now controls whether his business survives. Sarah stopped walking and turned to face me. Harry, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Are you doing this for professional reasons, or are you looking for revenge? The question forced me to examine my motivations more carefully than I'd been willing to do. Maybe both. But also, this is genuinely a great opportunity for TechFlow. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm curious to see who my father really is when he thinks no one he cares about is watching. Just promise me you won't let this consume you. You've built something really good here, and I don't want to see you sacrifice that for the chance to prove a point to people who have already proven they don't deserve your energy. I kissed her forehead, grateful for her wisdom and perspective. I promise. This is business first, personal second. The flight to Chicago felt like traveling backward through time. As the plane descended toward O'Hare, I could see the skyline that had once represented home and opportunity. Now it looked like a collection of monuments to someone else's dreams. I had reserved a room at the Marriott downtown, deliberately avoiding any neighborhoods where I might encounter familiar faces. The Kellner Morrison and Associates offices occupied 3 floors of a prestigious building in the Loop, exactly the kind of environment my father had always described as the pinnacle of professional achievement. As I walked through the lobby with Lisa and our presentation materials, I felt calm in a way that surprised me. This was my territory now, my expertise, my moment to demonstrate competence on my own terms. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor gave me time to center myself. In a few minutes, I would see my father for the first time since walking out of my childhood bedroom. But this time I was walking in as someone he needed rather than someone he could discard. The conference room reflected everything my father had always valued, floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the Chicago skyline mahogany furniture that probably cost more than most people's cars, and oil paintings of distinguished legal figures who seemed to judge everyone from their gilded frames. I wore my best charcoal gray suit, the one Sarah had helped me pick out for important client meetings, and carried myself with the confidence that came from 6 months of professional victories. My father entered the room looking older than I remembered, with new lines around his eyes and gray threading through his dark hair. He wore his authority like an expensive cologne, immediately taking control of the room's energy as he introduced himself to our team. Behind him followed three other partners: Margaret Stevens, whom I recognized from firm holiday parties, James Morrison, the founding partner's son, and Catherine Walsh, who specialized in employment law. "Thank you for coming." My father began settling into the head chair with practiced ease. "As you know, we're dealing with a significant public relations crisis that threatens to undermine decades of careful reputation building." Lisa opened her portfolio and began her introduction. "We appreciate the opportunity to present our approach, Mr. Kellner. Before we dive into strategy, let me introduce our team. I'm Lisa Chen, Creative Director, and this is Harry, our Senior Marketing Specialist, who will be leading this project." My father's eyes passed over me briefly, a polite nod of acknowledgement, before returning to Lisa. He had not recognized me yet. 6 months of better nutrition, regular exercise, and genuine self-confidence had changed my appearance more than I realized. The man looking back at him was not the uncertain, eager-to-please son he had dismissed, but a professional who belonged in this room. The situation we're facing stems from the Martinez discrimination case. Margaret Stevens continued consulting her notes with obvious discomfort. Our handling of the settlement negotiations became public, and the coverage has been uniformly negative. We're looking at potential client defections and serious damage to our recruitment efforts. I leaned forward, pen ready. Can you walk me through the specific aspects of the coverage that have been most damaging? I want to understand which narratives we need to counter versus which ones we can redirect. As my father began explaining the details, I watched his mannerisms with new eyes. The way he dismissed Margaret's attempt to add context, the subtle condescension in his voice when discussing the plaintiff's allegations, the complete absence of genuine remorse for the harm caused to an employee who had been systematically harassed. This was who he had always been, but I had been too young and too desperate for his approval to see it clearly. 15 minutes into his presentation, something shifted in his expression. His voice trailed off mid-sentence as he stared at me with growing recognition. I watched the color drain from his face as the pieces clicked together in his mind. "Excuse me," he said quietly, his composure cracking for the first time since I had known him. "I need a moment to review some documents." He stood abruptly and walked toward the window, his back to the room. I could see his reflection in the glass watching me with an expression I had never seen before: fear. "Mr. Kellner," Lisa asked, concerned, "are you all right?" "Yes, of course." He turned back to face us, but his confidence had evaporated. "I'm sorry, where were we?" I was about to outline our comprehensive strategy for rehabilitating the firm's image, I said calmly, opening my presentation folder. "The approach involves 3 phases: immediate damage control, narrative reconstruction, and long-term reputation building. The fee structure reflects the complexity of the work, but I believe you'll find our rates competitive for this level of expertise." I outlined the campaign with the same professional competence I had brought to every client project, explaining how we would shift public perception through strategic media placement, community engagement initiatives, and thought leadership content. The strategy was solid, exactly what the firm needed, and priced at $95,000 for the initial phase. The other partners asked intelligent questions and seemed genuinely impressed with our approach. My father remained silent, occasionally glancing at me with an expression that mixed disbelief with something that might have been panic. "This is exactly what we need," James Morrison said enthusiastically. "When could you start?" "We could begin immediate implementation within 2 weeks." I replied, maintaining eye contact with my father. "However, I want to ensure complete alignment on expectations and deliverables before we move forward." After another hour of discussion, the meeting concluded with handshakes and promises to send contracts within 24 hours. My father managed to participate in the closing pleasantries, but I could see the effort it required. As our group collected our materials, my father approached me with careful steps. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" he asked quietly. Lisa looked at me questioningly, and I nodded my consent. I'll meet you in the lobby in 10 minutes. When the conference room emptied, my father and I faced each other across the polished table where I had just demonstrated my professional competence. The silence stretched between us like a chasm filled with 6 months of consequences. Harry, he began, then stopped, seemingly unable to find words adequate for the situation. Yes, Mr. Kellner. The formal address hit him like a physical blow. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 57 years. I don't understand. How are you here? What is this? This is business, Mr. Kellner. Your firm needs marketing expertise, and my company provides that service. The fact that we know each other personally doesn't change the professional relationship. But where have you been? You thought what, that I had disappeared forever as requested, that your greatest wish had been granted? He winced at his own words being reflected back to him. Harry, you have to understand we were under tremendous pressure with the wedding planning. Things were said in anger that we didn't mean. Were you angry when you told Jake that I had decided to skip Emma's wedding to travel through Europe? Because that conversation happened weeks before you asked me to disappear forever. It seems like the anger was pretty well planned out. The accuracy of that observation left him speechless. He tried to meet my eyes and failed. I need to ask you directly, I continued. Do you want our company to handle this project, or would you prefer to work with a different firm? Because if we move forward, it will be entirely professional. I won't give you special treatment because we share a last name, and I won't sabotage the work because of personal issues. I'm very good at what I do, and right now you need someone who's very good at what they do. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your father told me what happened. We need to talk. Please call me tonight. I showed him the message. It seems word travels fast. Harry, your mother she's not handling any of this well. The wedding, your absence, the business problems, she's barely sleeping. That's unfortunate. However, I need a decision about the marketing contract. My team is waiting. He nodded slowly, the weight of our new dynamic settling over him like a heavy coat. We want to work with you. Your presentation was excellent and we need the help. Good. Lisa will send the contracts tomorrow. If you have any questions about the work, you can reach me through normal business channels. I gathered my materials and walked toward the door, then paused at the threshold. For what it's worth, the strategy I outlined will work. Your firm will recover from this crisis if you implement the recommendations consistently. But Mr. Kellner? Yes. Next time you want someone to disappear forever, make sure they don't have skills you might need later. The hotel room felt like a neutral zone between the life I had left behind and the life I was building. I ordered room service and tried to process the surreal experience of conducting business with the man who had systematically erased me from his family narrative. The professional side of my brain was satisfied with how the meeting had gone, but the personal side struggled with emotions I thought I had resolved. Sarah called while I was picking at a Caesar salad that tasted like cardboard. How did it go? She asked, and I could hear her genuine concern through the phone. Better than expected, professionally speaking. The presentation went well, and they want to move forward with the contract. Personally, it was like watching someone realize they had thrown away something valuable and only discovered its worth when they needed it. How do you feel about that? Honestly, part of me feels vindicated, but mostly I just feel sad for all of us. This didn't have to happen this way. We talked for another 20 minutes about the logistics of the project and my flight back to Portland the next morning. Sarah reminded me that we had dinner plans with her parents that weekend, a normal relationship milestone that felt more important now than it had a few hours earlier. I was preparing for bed when my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed my mother's number. Harry. Her voice was thin and shaky. Please don't hang up. I'm listening. Your father told me what happened today. He came home looking like he'd seen a ghost, and when he explained, Harry, I need to apologize to you. For which part? The question seemed to catch her off guard. for all of it, for telling you to disappear, for not fighting harder for you to be included in Emma's wedding, for letting things get so bad between us. Mom, I need you to understand something. The problem wasn't one bad conversation or one terrible decision. The problem was 28 years of making it clear that Emma was the child you were proud of, and I was the child you tolerated. That's not true, Harry. We love you just as much as we love Emma. Love and pride are different things. You love me the way you love a disappointing relative you feel obligated to include in family functions. You're proud of Emma the way you're proud of an accomplishment that reflects well on your parenting. The silence on her end stretched long enough that I wondered if she had hung up. I don't know how to fix this, she finally whispered. I'm not sure you can fix it, Mom. But if you want to try, you'll need to start by being honest about what actually happened and why it happened. No more stories about me choosing to travel through Europe. No more rewriting history to make yourselves look better. Emma's wedding is in 3 weeks. Will you please come home for it? The question I had been dreading finally arrived. No, Mom, I won't be coming home. But the business with your father, doesn't that change things? The business is business. That doesn't repair the damage you and Dad did to our relationship. If anything, it highlighted how little you actually know about who I am or what I'm capable of. We talked for another hour, circling around years of accumulated resentment and misunderstanding. By the time we hung up, nothing had been resolved, but at least the conversation had been honest, in a way our family communication rarely achieved. The flight back to Portland the next morning felt like traveling toward oxygen after being underwater. As the plane lifted off from O'Hare, I watched Chicago shrink below me and felt the familiar relief of returning to a place where I belonged rather than a place where I was tolerated. 2 days after returning to work, I was reviewing client reports when our receptionist announced that I had visitors in the lobby. I expected to see potential clients or vendor representatives, but instead found Emma standing near the elevator with 3 pieces of luggage and red-rimmed eyes. Hi, Harry, she said quietly. I drove straight through from Chicago. Can we talk? The sight of her hit me harder than I had anticipated. Emma looked exhausted and older than her 25 years, wearing jeans and a Northwestern University sweatshirt I remembered from her graduate school days. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had the hollow-eyed look of someone who had not slept in days. Emma, what are you doing here? I canceled the wedding. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from an explosion. Lisa approached from her office, clearly curious about the family drama unfolding in our professional space. Harry, do you need some time? We can handle things here. Yes, thank you. Emma, let's go to my apartment. The drive through Portland was quiet except for Emma's occasional directions about which bag she needed from the trunk. She stared out the window at the city I had learned to love, taking in the food trucks and coffee shops and bicycle lanes that represented everything different about my new life. My apartment had become a reflection of the person I was becoming rather than the person I had been expected to be. Emma walked through the space, slowly examining the artwork I had chosen and the furniture that reflected my actual preferences rather than family expectations. This place is really you, she said, settling onto my couch with a cup of the coffee I had learned to make properly. I've never seen you live in a space that felt like you before. Tell me about the wedding. Emma stared into her coffee mug like it might contain answers to questions she was afraid to ask. I called it off 3 days ago. Returned the ring yesterday. Brad he wasn't happy. What happened? Watching Mom and Dad panic about losing their business made me realize how toxic our family values really are. They were running around trying to figure out how to use your success to solve their problems, completely missing the irony that they had tried to throw you away 6 months earlier. She looked up at me with eyes that reminded me of our childhood back when we had been allies against the adult world rather than competitors for parental approval. Harry, I realized that if I went through with that wedding, I would be choosing their money over my integrity for the second time. First, with excluding you, then, with marrying someone whose parents they approved of, rather than someone I actually loved. Did you love Brad? I thought I did. But honestly, I think I loved the idea of being the daughter who did everything right. Brad was handsome and successful, and came from the right kind of family. He checked all the boxes on their list without necessarily checking the boxes on mine. I sat across from her processing this revelation. What are you going to do now? I was hoping, could I maybe stay here for a while? I know it's a lot to ask, but I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be the perfect daughter. And I need to do it somewhere they can't influence my decisions. The request caught me completely off guard. 6 months ago, Emma had chosen financial security over family loyalty. Now she was asking to rebuild our relationship on terms that had nothing to do with parental expectations or family politics. Emma, I need to be honest with you. I'm not the same person who left Chicago 6 months ago. I've built a life here that works for me with people who care about me for who I actually am. If you stay, it can't be temporary until things blow over at home. It has to be because you genuinely want to build a different kind of relationship with me. I do want that. Harry, losing you was the worst part of this whole mess. Worse than losing the wedding money, worse than disappointing them. I realize that you're the only person in our family who has ever accepted me without conditions. I thought about Sarah's wisdom regarding revenge versus healing, and Lisa's observations about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who brought out your best qualities rather than your worst impulses. You can stay in the guest room for as long as you need to figure things out. But Emma, you have to understand that I'm not going to be your bridge back to them. If you want a relationship with Mom and Dad, you'll need to navigate that independently. She nodded eagerly. I understand, and Harry, thank you for not giving up on me completely. That evening, I introduced Emma to Sarah over dinner at our favorite restaurant in the Pearl District. Watching them interact gave me hope that the family relationships I chose to cultivate could be healthier than the ones I had inherited. Sarah treated Emma with genuine warmth while maintaining appropriate boundaries, demonstrating the kind of emotional intelligence I had learned to value during my time in Portland. As we walked home after dinner, Emma linked her arm through mine the way she used to when we were kids, navigating family gatherings together. I have something else to tell you, she said. About Mom and Dad. What about them? They're talking about getting divorced. The stress from the business problems and losing both of us has made them realize they don't actually like each other very much when they're not united in managing their children's lives. The information should have upset me, but instead I felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe our family needed to completely fall apart before any of us could figure out how to build something authentic from the pieces. The marketing campaign for Kellner Morrison and Associates exceeded every performance metric we had projected. Within 6 weeks of implementation, negative media coverage dropped by 78%, and the firm began receiving inquiries from potential clients who had been impressed with their apparent commitment to accountability and reform. My strategy focused on transparency rather than deflection, encouraging the partners to acknowledge their mistakes publicly while demonstrating concrete changes in their policies and procedures. Working with my father's firm maintained its surreal quality, but the professional success was undeniable. I participated in weekly progress calls where he treated me with the cautious respect reserved for competent strangers rather than the dismissive familiarity he had shown me as his son. The dynamic suited me perfectly. I could demonstrate my capabilities without the emotional baggage that had always complicated our interactions. Emma had settled into Portland life with surprising ease. She found work as a research assistant at Oregon Health and Science University, using her graduate degree in psychology to contribute to studies on family trauma and recovery. The irony of her professional focus was not lost on either of us, but she approached the work with genuine dedication rather than therapeutic self-indulgence. Our relationship was slowly rebuilding on healthier foundations. We had dinner together twice a week, took weekend hikes in the Columbia River Gorge, and gradually learned to interact as adults who chose to spend time together rather than siblings obligated by family expectations. Emma respected the boundaries of my relationship with Sarah while developing her own friendships within Portland's young professional community. 3 months after Emma's arrival, Sarah and I were cooking dinner in my apartment when the building's intercom buzzed. The voice through the speaker was my mother, strained and uncertain. "Harry, it's your mother and father. We're downstairs. Could we please come up?" Emma, who was setting the table, froze with plates halfway to their destinations. Sarah continued stirring pasta sauce with deliberate calm, letting me process this unexpected development without additional pressure. "Are you expecting them?" I asked Emma. "No, I haven't talked to them since I left Chicago. They don't even know I'm living here." I pressed the intercom button. "Come up to apartment 4B. The few minutes while they climbed 3 flights of stairs gave me time to center myself. This was my space, my life, my terms. They were visitors here rather than authority figures, and I intended to maintain that dynamic regardless of what they wanted. The knock on the door was tentative, nothing like the confident entrance my father made in professional settings. When I opened it, I was struck by how diminished they both appeared. My mother had lost weight and looked older than her 54 years, while my father carried himself with none of the commanding presence I remembered from childhood. "Harry," my mother began, then stopped when she saw Emma emerge from the kitchen. "Emma." My father's voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" "I live here now," Emma replied evenly. "I canceled my wedding and moved to Portland to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to be your perfect daughter." The revelation hit them like physical blows. My mother actually stepped backward, reaching for the wall to steady herself. "You canceled your wedding," she repeated. "But the deposits, the planning, everything was arranged. I returned what I could and forfeited the rest. It seemed like a small price to pay for my integrity." Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, dish towel in hand. "Hi, I'm Sarah, Harry's girlfriend. Would you like some coffee?" The offer of hospitality in what they clearly expected to be a confrontational situation seemed to further disorient my parents. They accepted coffee with the bewildered gratitude of people who had prepared for war and been offered peace instead. We sat in my living room, the space arranged according to my preferences rather than formal entertaining requirements. My parents perched on the edge of the couch like guests uncertain of their welcome, while Emma, Sarah, and I settled into chairs that reflected the comfortable dynamics of people who actually enjoyed each other's company. "We came to apologize," my mother began, her voice shaky, "and to ask if there's any way to repair what we've broken." "What specifically are you apologizing for?" I asked. The question forced them to confront details rather than hiding behind general regret. My father cleared his throat and attempted to take control of the conversation. "We realized we handled the wedding situation poorly. We were under stress and said things we didn't mean." "Dad, stop. Please don't insult my intelligence by pretending this was about wedding stress. You planned my exclusion weeks in advance and created cover stories to hide your cruelty from extended family and friends." "That's not," he began, then stopped when he saw my expression. "I talked to Jake. I know about the European travel story. I know you told people I had chosen to miss Emma's wedding for personal reasons. You didn't exclude me in a moment of anger. You calculated how to remove me from the family in a way that would make you look reasonable and me look selfish." My mother started crying quietly, but I felt no urge to comfort her. These were the consequences of choices she had made deliberately. "We thought," she said between tears, "we thought it would be easier for everyone if we had a simple explanation. Easier for who, certainly not easier for me." Emma leaned forward in her chair. "What they're not telling you is why they're really here, Harry." I looked at my sister questioningly. "James Morrison called them yesterday. He wants to offer you a partnership in the firm." The information hit me like cold water. A partnership at Kellner Morrison and Associates represented everything my father had ever claimed to want for me professionally. The salary would be in the high six figures, the prestige was undeniable, and the career trajectory would fast track me to the kind of success that impressed people at country club dinners. Is that true? I asked my father. He nodded reluctantly. The campaign you developed has been extraordinarily successful. The partners are impressed with your strategic thinking and want to bring you back to Chicago. And you thought coming here together to tell me about this offer would somehow repair our relationship? We hoped, my mother said quietly, that it might be a way for all of us to start over. You could come home, take your rightful place in the firm, and we could be a family again. The phrase rightful place revealed everything I needed to know about their motivations. They still did not understand that they had done anything fundamentally wrong. They simply wanted to benefit from my professional success while maintaining their narrative of generous parents, offering opportunities to their ungrateful son. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, I said slowly. You're offering me a chance to return to the city where you told me to disappear forever, to work at the company you own, so that my professional success can reflect positively on your family brand. That's not how we see it, my father protested. How do you see it? As an opportunity for healing and moving forward together. I looked at Sarah, who was listening to this conversation with the same careful attention she brought to parent-teacher conferences when she needed to understand family dynamics that were affecting her students. Emma sat with her arms crossed, clearly disgusted with our parents' approach. I'm going to decline the partnership offer, I said calmly. Harry, you should think about this carefully. My father said, his business instincts overriding his parental ones. This kind of opportunity doesn't come around often. You're absolutely right. And 6 months ago, I would have been desperate for your approval and this kind of recognition. But I've learned something important since leaving Chicago. I stood up and walked to the window that overlooked the Pearl District, where food trucks were serving dinner to young professionals who were writing their own stories. I've learned that success feels different when it's built on your own terms rather than someone else's expectations. I have a business partner here who respects my judgment, a girlfriend who loves me for who I actually am, and work that challenges me without requiring me to pretend to be someone I'm not. But the money, the prestige, the opportunities for advancement, my mother said desperately. Mom, I make enough money here to live comfortably. I have prestige within a community that values my contributions. And my opportunities for advancement are limited only by my willingness to work for them rather than my ability to meet family expectations. Emma stood and joined me at the window. Harry and I are actually talking about starting our own consulting firm, Kellner Creative Solutions. We'd focus on marketing and organizational psychology for small businesses and nonprofits. This was the first I'd heard of this idea, but as Emma outlined it, the concept felt immediately appealing. We would use our shared last name not to benefit from family connections, but to build something entirely our own. My parents absorbed this information with visible shock. Both of their children were not only rejecting their values, but actively choosing alternative paths that had nothing to do with traditional markers of success. We just want our family back, my father said quietly, and for the first time since they had arrived, his voice carried genuine emotion rather than strategic calculation. Then, you need to figure out how to build relationships with the people we actually are rather than the people you wanted us to be, I replied. Emma and I are willing to have relationships with you, but not on the terms you're offering. What terms would you accept? My mother asked. No contact for 6 months while you figure out whether you want to know us as individuals or control us as extensions of your identity. When that time is up, if you want to try building something authentic, we can start with small steps and honest conversations. 6 months, she repeated clearly, hoping she had misunderstood. 6 months. No calls, no visits, no attempts to manipulate us through extended family or mutual friends. Use that time to think about whether you're interested in loving the people we actually are or just managing the people you want us to become? My father stood slowly, suddenly looking every one of his 57 years. And if we do that, if we take the 6 months and really examine our behavior, there's a possibility of rebuilding our relationship. There's a possibility of building a relationship, period. What we had before was not a relationship. It was a performance where Emma and I competed for approval that was always conditional and never quite enough. They left quietly, carrying themselves like people who had lost a negotiation they had expected to win. After the door closed, the four of us sat in my living room, processing what had just occurred. Well, Sarah said finally, "That was intense." Emma laughed a sound that carried both relief and exhaustion. "They still don't get it, do they? They thought they could show up here and offer you a consolation prize for 6 months of abandonment." "Maybe they'll figure it out during the 6 months," I said, though I was not particularly optimistic. "And if they don't, then we'll know we tried everything reasonable and we can move forward with clear consciences." Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of how you handled that. You were firm without being cruel and honest without being destructive. I learned from watching you deal with difficult parents during conferences," I admitted. Professional boundaries with personal warmth. Emma curled up in the corner of the couch with a pillow, looking more relaxed than she had since arriving in Portland. "So, about this consulting firm idea I just invented, are you actually interested?" The question opened a door to possibilities I had not previously considered. Working with Emma could give us both the chance to build something meaningful while reconstructing our relationship on professional rather than purely personal terms. "Tell me more about what you're thinking." 18 months later, Kellner Creative Solutions occupied a converted warehouse space in Southeast Portland with exposed brick walls displaying the work of local artists and standing desks arranged to encourage collaboration rather than hierarchy. Emma and I had built the business methodically, starting with referrals from my TechFlow contacts and her university connections, gradually expanding our client base through consistently excellent results rather than aggressive marketing. Our approach combined my expertise in digital strategy with Emma's background in organizational psychology, offering small businesses and nonprofits the kind of comprehensive support typically available only to large corporations. We helped a local food truck collective develop a coordinated social media presence, assisted a domestic violence shelter in rebranding their services to better reach underserved communities, and guided a sustainable fashion startup through their launch campaign. The work felt meaningful in ways my previous career had not. Every client relationship began with understanding their authentic mission rather than imposing our preconceptions about what success should look like. Emma brought insights about team dynamics and workplace culture that enhanced my strategic recommendations, while I provided marketing frameworks that amplified her psychological interventions. Our business partnership had strengthened our personal relationship in unexpected ways. Working together required us to communicate clearly about expectations, resolve conflicts directly, rather than avoiding them, and support each other's professional growth without competing for recognition. We had learned to be siblings who happened to work together rather than business partners who happened to share a family history. 6 months after our parents' visit, they had honored the no-contact agreement with surprising discipline. When the waiting period ended, they reached out through carefully worded emails that acknowledged specific behaviors rather than offering general apologies. My mother had started individual therapy to address what she described as generational patterns of conditional love. My father had joined a support group for parents whose adult children had cut contact learning to examine his role in family dysfunction rather than blaming external stressors. Their efforts seemed genuine, though rebuilding trust required consistent demonstration rather than dramatic gestures. We began with monthly video calls that lasted exactly 1 hour and focused on present-day updates rather than relitigating past grievances. Slowly, carefully, we started constructing relationships that resembled friendship more than traditional family obligation. Emma had been dating Marcus Rivera, a nurse practitioner who worked in pediatric oncology and shared her commitment to meaningful work over financial advancement. Their relationship developed with the healthy pacing of two people who had learned to value authenticity over performance. Marcus treated Emma with the kind of steady affection that had nothing to do with her ability to meet external expectations. My relationship with Sarah had evolved into the kind of partnership I had not known was possible. We got engaged on a hiking trail in the Columbia River Gorge, with a ring I had chosen based on her personal style rather than traditional expectations about diamonds and expense. The proposal was simple and private, reflecting our shared preference for authentic moments over Instagram-worthy performances. The wedding planning process revealed how much my understanding of family celebrations had changed. Instead of the elaborate production that had characterized Emma's canceled wedding, Sarah and I designed a ceremony that reflected our actual values and relationships. Emma served as my best person, Marcus officiated using credentials he had obtained online, and Sarah's parents hosted the reception in their backyard with food prepared by friends rather than professional caterers. My parents attended as invited guests rather than financial sponsors, contributing a handmade photo album of family memories that focused on positive moments rather than manufactured perfection. Their presence felt appropriate rather than obligatory, and their behavior demonstrated respect for our choices, rather than attempts to impose their preferences. The morning after our wedding, Sarah and I sat on our apartment balcony, drinking coffee and watching Portland wake up around us. Food trucks were setting up for the day. Cyclists were beginning their commutes, and somewhere in the distance, we could hear the sound of a street musician practicing guitar. "Do you ever miss Chicago?" Sarah asked, settling into the chair beside mine with her favorite mug. "I miss some things about it. The architecture, the lakefront deep dish pizza that actually tastes good, but I don't miss the person I was when I lived there." What was different about that person? He was always trying to earn something that was never actually available for earning. Approval, recognition, a place at the table that was set according to someone else's preferences. It took leaving to realize that I could set my own table. Emma emerged from the guest room wearing pajamas and bedhead, carrying a cup of tea, and the satisfied expression of someone who had slept deeply and peacefully. "Good morning, newlyweds. How does it feel to be officially married?" "Exactly the same as it felt yesterday," I replied, and meant it as the highest compliment possible. "That's probably a good sign," Emma said, settling into the third chair with the comfort of someone who belonged in this space. When marriage feels like a natural extension of what you already have, rather than a dramatic transformation into something else. The three of us sat in comfortable silence, watching our neighborhood begin its daily routine. This was not the family I'd been born into, but it was the family I had chosen to create. The relationships were based on mutual respect rather than obligation, authentic affection rather than conditional approval, and shared values rather than inherited expectations. My phone buzzed with a text message from a potential client, a nonprofit focused on environmental education that wanted help developing their fundraising strategy. The work would challenge us to apply our skills to a new sector while supporting a mission we both cared about personally. Emma read the message over my shoulder and immediately began brainstorming approaches that would combine marketing effectiveness with psychological insights about donor motivation. "Should we head into the office and start working on the proposal?" she asked. "In a minute. I want to finish my coffee first." The simple pleasure of drinking coffee at my own pace, in my own space, with people who appreciated me for who I actually was, felt like the most radical act possible. For 28 years, I had organized my life around other people's definitions of success and happiness. Now at 30, I was finally learning to trust my own judgment about what made life worth living. The business would grow, my relationships would continue developing, And my parents would either learn to love their children unconditionally or remain peripheral figures in our lives. All of these outcomes felt manageable because they were based on choices rather than inheritances. As we prepared to head to the office, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. Disappearing from my family had been the most painful experience of my life, but it had also been the most necessary. Sometimes you have to lose everything you think you want in order to discover what you actually need. The greatest gift was not the wedding invitation I had been denied, but the opportunity to build a life that belonged entirely to me. If you have ever felt like you were not valued by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, I want you to know that your worth is not determined by their recognition. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from relationships that require you to be smaller than you actually are. What would you do if you discovered that the people who claim to love you actually needed you to disappear in order to be happy? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal integrity? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more stories about finding your authentic self in difficult circumstances. And if you think someone in your life might need to hear this message, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is bet on yourself when no one else will. Your life belongs to you, and you have every right to live it according to your own values rather than someone else's expectations.